The infinity ribbon. It all began over 50 years ago when I made an observation about how people interact within groups and organizations. My dad responded with his typical peacemaker's wisdom, emphasizing that anything can be used for both good and bad purposes. I asked how. In response, he showed me his pocket knife and posed a question of his own. "Can this knife be used for something bad?" I replied, "It could hurt someone," as I knew full well from a 2-year-old scar. Then he asked, "Can this knife be used for something good?" I responded, "It could be used to cut up food to eat." That's when my dad pointed out that the same principle applies to people. This comparison set my mind racing like a space rocket spiraling through a wormhole time warp. Back then, we didn't even know what a wormhole was. But outer space was a significant topic due to the Apollo moon landings at the time. As I delved into deep thought about what my dad had said, I envisioned a ring with one end illuminated in bright white light and the other end shrouded in deep darkness. People stood at the bright point but began moving in both directions outward. I quickly realized that regardless of their cause or purpose, they were all headed toward the same dark point. Along the way, they crossed various shades of gray darkness, which meant we make choices every step of the way to do good or bad. I couldn't comprehend why people would do bad things, so I again turned to my dad for answers. He pondered for a moment and then, in an unusually high-pitched voice, admitted, "I don't know." It was his delivery that struck me. He seemed to have confidence in my ability to find the answer, a newfound confidence I hadn't experienced before. It altered the course of my life's interests forever. The more I pondered this dilemma, the more the circle divided into multiple circles, then forming a sphere of circles. This original circle and eventual sphere of circles became the foundation for the Robbie Ousley superdynamic social stratosphere, or the ROSeDS Model, which unites everything individual, social, and physical. I've since immersed myself into various groups, organizations, businesses, and work experiences, relishing the opportunity to connect with people of diverse backgrounds and circumstances worldwide. I've always been a dedicated people watcher, finding their thoughts and actions endlessly fascinating, particularly as they evolve through different circumstances over time. All of this came together to provide insights into why people engage in both good and bad behaviors and levels between. Surprisingly, this sphere of circles went on to explain that these principles apply similarly across different domains, often in unexpected ways. By comprehending the structures of stratospheres across domains, we can gain insight into areas that previously escaped our understanding. These spheres reflect each other in distinct ways, and you're about to gain a deeper comprehension of these images. The infinity of the ribbon is the reason the ROSeDS model is the golden rose of dimensional structures. Numbers with infinite formulas are identified as golden structures. The principle of endlessly treating others as one should expect to be treated is known as the golden rule. Likewise, the infinity ribbon is infinite in individual, social, physical, and dimensional structures. Namely, the Robbie Ousley superdynamic social stratosphere structure, the ROSeDS model. It can also be called the Robbie Ousley superdynamic dimensional structure with the same ROSeDS model acronym. I call it social structure because that's where it all began, without knowing that it would ultimately end up covering individual, physical, and dimensional structures. The structure of dimensions is the pattern for all natural structures. But the structure for dimensions comes from within individual, social, and physical structures to build all that is needed for every dimension. So what really comes first, the chicken or the egg, the individual or the dimension, the social or the dimension, the physical or the dimension? The individual comes first, then the social, then the physical. And the dimensions are before, throughout, and beyond all of these. The ROSeDS model flows through all order in all spheres of dimensions. Identifying the ROSeDS model in structures also explains a lot about non-dimensional existence, including pre-dimensional and post-dimensional. although all three exist with full integrity and harmonious balance, infinitely in every way. Because of the balance of dimensional and non-dimensional elements, everything is in place to not only allow, but brings everything in existence into harmony. Order is not proof of the existence of God, even though to people who already believe in God, order is an aspect of evidence that God exists. Order cannot be depended on as proof that God exists to those who do not believe in God. There is a proof of God's existence, but so far religious believers have not been able to recognize it due to blind spots in religious perspectives. We'll get into that subject in universal segments at another time. The ROSeDS model explains the structures of physical, social, and individual elements, including life, awareness, connectedness, and the rhythm found throughout existence. Almost everything people have identified as spiritual and supernatural are simply dimensional anomalies. We can know this through understanding the ROSeDS because the model bears out that spiritual means non-dimensional and supernatural means interdimensional. Have I perked up your interest in the infinity ribbon, the ROSeDS model, universal, and the Democracy Tea Party? Oh, wait, I didn't mention the Democracy Tea Party yet, did I? It's not political, even though some political subjects approach the Democracy Tea Party. The DTP is all about how the ROSeDS structure works with ideas that can improve all lives without having to be in conflict. Understanding ROSeDS helps every individual readily identify when they're being taken advantage of, as well as when we are most likely taking advantage of others. Do unto others as we should want them to do to ourselves makes all the difference in the world. Why are there people living without shelter? What could they do to help themselves? What could we do to stop taking advantage of those less fortunate than ourselves? Most of us don't do it intentionally. Most don't recognize how we do because it is a part of life, or so we've been convinced that it is. And with that in mind, now that you've seen the introduction to the Robbie Ousley super dynamic social stratosphere model, we'll move on to the most exciting bonus part number 6 of the ROSeDS introduction.